Okay, so in this video, I'm taking a quick look at a customer's FLA file, source file for a template that he's creating, where he basically says that he's finding a lot of JavaScript errors in the creation of his character. Now, the first thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that there are pivot points all over the place. He says basically that the eraser tool that didn't work for him and stuff, and I'm assuming that he did in fact maybe used it on some of these things to clean it out. I don't necessarily see any like evidence of that in this version or in this source file, but that's fine. I do see that everything that I'm clicking on is properly configured. For example, that's the face 180 that I'm touching. This is the back hair 180, so that's the back of the hair. So that's perfectly fine, but these pivot points would be my first area of concern for me. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is also I'm gonna check and make sure that this is an ActionScript 3 document. So I'm going to export, import, let's see, where is it? Convert to, okay, HTML5. If this was already an HTML5 document, I wouldn't have a choice to convert to HTML5. So this tells me that this is in fact an ActionScript 3 document, which means I can publish to SWF, and we are fine. So that is not the reason why. Now, usually the culprit is the fact that people who are not experienced, they're going to want to use the HTML5 version of Flash and instantly start getting all these JavaScript errors. If you are doing something like that, just avoid it. So okay, let's go ahead and get rid of all these pivot points. These are useless right now. They're just all over the place. So one way of doing it, obviously the ones that I can see, I can just select and click. Now, another thing that I noticed in this file is that the person who's working on this likes to work in multiple layers. There's nothing wrong with this. In fact, this is the way that it used to be recommended back in the day to keep everything nice and organized. Personally, I think it's just very, you know, it's just cluttered. So personally, I don't like it. I don't use it, not for the development part. Later on, if you want to organize things and stuff, that's when I recommend you separate everything into layers. But for the initial development phase, I personally just recommend keeping everything on the same layer. Now, some of these pivot points are getting a little bit hard to select. So a trick to get around this is you turn on the outline mode. Once you do that, you can see the pivot points a little bit better, and that way you'll avoid just leaving stuff behind that doesn't need to be there. So stuff like this, you're just gonna have to select and click and find them and delete them. Select and delete. So all these stuff you don't need, we're gonna get rid of it. Oops, and I just got rid of a nose right there. Control Z to go back, and we did that. All right. So with this outline view, it's very helpful because it allows us to see like an X-ray version of your cartoon, and you can see what's underneath it, and if there's any pivot points that we may have missed or that are sitting underneath the layers, then it makes it easier to tell everything apart. So I'm gonna zoom out a bit and see if I see any more random. Okay, see, there's one right here. I'm gonna get rid of that one. So it feels to me like everything is cleaned up. So now let's go back and try to fix things. Now, me personally, I mean, obviously at this point you can work any way you like. So I'm gonna take this, like me personally, my personal style is I like to just work on everything on a single layer. So I'm just gonna grab everything, cut. I'll get rid of all these layers. This is just useless, at least to me anyways. You can select everything by holding down the shift, delete, yes. And we're gonna call this face Paste everything in place. If it'll let us, there it is. So we got everything on a nice single layer. And we're gonna go here, we're gonna turn the outline mode on back off. And so this is the ear, and I can see that this ear is still configured. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select everything, go to our extensions area and select Puppet Producer, and we're gonna use the eraser function, okay? So we're just gonna flat out select everything and click the eraser one time. And you can click it a couple more times if you want, just to make sure. But notice that once I click on an item, this instance name has been blanked out. So that's all gone. So everything is clean when you look in your properties panel. So now we're gonna zoom in on this face here. So this is, I'm assuming this is gonna be the ear. So that's the character's right ear. His right, my left. And we'll go here for the other ear, the left ear. Then we'll do the eye, click, and then more clicking, and then the nose. At this point it's just clickety-clack. I don't recommend using outlines for stuff like this. So personally, if you're using outlines, most likely this is not even going to show up once you bring it into Crazy Talk Animator. Preferably you might want to either create outlines around fills or convert your outlines to fills. That way they show up better inside of Crazy Talk Animator, unless you have a specific reason for wanting to do something like this, like maybe adjust the weight or something inside. Anyways, that's a story for another day. So here's the face, click. And now the face creates the center pivot point at the center of the face. So you're gonna have to do a little bit of tweaking to this. So I found the pivot for the face 0. And one of the things that I do is we'll go to the view menu and get the rulers to show up. We'll click and drag on the top ruler and drag it down and maybe put it somewhere right here at the place where the neck is, the face is going to rotate around the neck. That's probably where you want this pivot to be. And so we're gonna push that pivot down along there. That way this neck can, this face can rotate around this area here. And I'm gonna leave this line here as a guide because basically, you know, your face is basically being placed around that line. So whenever you create this particular face, which is the 180, just turn them around. We'll click the face there. We know exactly where to move that pivot point. And that way it keeps everything nice in aligned. So that's just a little trick for you. These nuts, you can leave them exactly where they are if you want. But personally, I recommend just kind of stretching them out outside of the character and just leaving them there. Maybe put another line here to help you keep those nuts just aligned, you know, for just, you know, reference, I guess. All right, so let's see here. I'm assuming this is the front hair, and that character doesn't seem to have back hair. So let's flip them back to the front and click the front hair, and boom. So that's already fully configured. I can do this with the next angle, which is the 180 on that one. Make sure you're working with the correct angle in the Puppet Producer that you're doing inside of your flash canvas area. So this is the back hair, so we're gonna click on back hair, and we could just leave that exactly where it is. This is the left ear. So here, I actually labeled it here, left is on this side, right is on that side. But since he's facing that way, I wonder if I did something to this. Let's see here. Right. So see, I kind of did that wrong. You gotta keep everything like in your head, kind of visualized. So I'm gonna erase that. So this is my right ear. So I'm going to click on the right ear over here. This is my left ear, so I'm going to click on the left ear there, and now I have it properly configured. I don't see any more facial sprites, so we're going to leave that alone. Now this is going to be my next one is my 315. So make sure that the 315 is selected, and everything else is just clickety clack. Front hair, eye. Now this eye came out all weird. Let's see here, what did I do? Maybe I selected the wrong shape. I think I did. So let's erase that. I got rid of the pivot and I got rid of the face again because I accidentally selected the face. So make sure we got the eye. This eye probably is not going to look like this inside of Crazy Talk Animator because that's an outline. That outline's going to get like shrunken down and you're barely going to see it. So I would recommend converting it to a fill before you export it. So, okay, click, 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 and click. And we got the ear. And we got the other ear. And finalize it with the face. Again, that's going to create 2 pivot points. One there, which we're going to squeeze to the bottom. Now, the trick to creating a good face so that you don't have to do these kind of manual tweaks is like when you're actually building these, put the pivot point. See, you see where you have this registration point here? If you actually put your registration point for your circle where you want it to be when you're developing, notice how my registration point for this shape is here now instead of being up there. Puppet Producer is going to recognize where that registration point is. Oops, I clicked on that without selecting anything. Clean that out. Okay, so I have this this shape here, the symbol, and it has a registration point right there already created. So what we're doing is we're gonna get the proper angle first. So when we actually want to configure this face, we're gonna click on it one time. Boom. Puppet Producer recognizes where that registration point is and automatically places it there for us, so we don't have to move it. Now this one, yeah, we're gonna be having to move it, so no big deal. But the actual registration point for the face itself was placed exactly where I needed it. That way, when we're inside of the main program, it pivots around this section that we want it to be. And this is pretty much how you fix it, man. You keep going until you're finished. Now, most likely, this by itself, you won't be able to test it yet because the software is not going to work with just heads. You're going to need bodies. Even if the bodies don't have anything, go ahead and create something with like a fake neck and fake torso, fake arms and stuff. Because the program is going to require you to have the complete body before it will allow you to import this stuff properly. So even if you only need the head, just put a couple dots in here and complete the model so that when you import it, you can still extract the head from that and you can just throw away the body that you don't need. So you are going to have to create that body even if it's just a bunch of like sticks or dots or whatever. Keep doing that with the rest of these angles here. A special trick is if you're on Windows, it's going to work great. You might have a little bit of problem on Macs. I've had some reports that some Macs won't do it. But let's say this is the 315 angle. Select the whole thing. Click on this, this mask button, which is kind of like a happy, sad face type of thing. So you select the 315, and we're going to switch it to 45. Click OK. And boom, it automatically did the work for us. So we won't have to do that that mirror angle. So that's going to save you about 50% of the remaining work. So you could have done that with the front face also and the back face and the top and bottom and stuff like that. So hopefully that gives you a way to clean this out. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them my way.